Case study number 1. As a resident electrical engineer with a duty of care to the public under common law, there are several obligations imposed on oneself as a professional engineer, such as ensuring safety standard compliance, risk assessment and mitigation, and also supervision and oversight. For the first solution, ensuring safety standard compliance, professional engineer must have a comprehensive understanding of the relevant safety standard regulation and codes applicable to electrical installation and equipment. These include national standards such as those issued by the Malaysian Standard MS or the International Electrical Commission IEC. Next, designing for safety. Engineers play a crucial role in the design phase of electrical equipment and installation. They must ensure that design prioritizes safety by incorporating features such as adequate insulation, proper grounding, and protection against overcurrent and overvoltages conditions. Design consideration should also account for potential hazards such as electrical shock, fire, and explosion. BEM Code of Ethics for case number 1. Responsibility to society, clause 3. Engineers have a responsibility to society to prioritize public safety and well-being in their professional activities. The engineer in this scenario is expected to prioritize the safety of the script wholesaler and other individuals on the construction site by ensuring that the transformer and other electrical equipment are installed and maintained in accordance with safety standards. Lastly, for case number 1, example from Board of Ethical Review cases, which is full disclosure of risk, case 319. An engineer was found to have violated ethical standard by failing to disclose potential risks associated with a construction project. Similarly, with the case scenario, the engineer had a duty to disclose any known risks associated with the transformer or the construction site to the employer and the scrap iron wholesaler. Failure to do so could be considered as a breach of ethical conduct as it deprives individuals of opportunity to make informed decisions about their safety. Case study number 2. The situation presents a conflict of interest for Engineer A as he serves both as a board member of the private healthcare provider and as a principal in engineering firm that secured a contract from the same provider. For case number 2, awarding contract. Engineers A, engineering firm, received a contract from the private healthcare provider to perform electrical maintenance work at the hospital facility. Engineer A participated in the decision-making process that selected the firm for the contract. For the second one, conflict of interest. There is a clear conflict of interest as Engineer A stands to benefit financially from the decision to award the contract to their own engineering firm. BEM Code of Ethics for case number 2. Ethical decision making, clause 4. Engineer A must carefully consider the ethical implication of their action and decision. This includes evaluating the potential impact of participating in the decision to award a contract to their own engineering firm on the reputation and trustworthiness of both to the private healthcare provider and the engineering profession as a whole. Lastly, examples from Board of Ethical Review cases. Award the contract to their own firm, case 300. A similar situation arose where an engineer served as a director of corporation and also a principal in engineering firm. This engineering firm received a contract from the corporation and the engineer participated in the decision-making process. The BER determined that the engineer had a conflict of interest and violated the ethical standards by participating in the decision to award the contract to their own firm.
Case number 3. Identify the area in which conflict between the resident electrical engineer staff and electrical contractor staff can develop and discuss the whether correlation can be achieved without infringing on the code of ethics. That is the solution. Integrity and honesty. This principle highlights the necessity of truthfulness and transparency in professional interaction. In conflict resolution, it ensures that both the resident electrical engineer staff and electrical contractor team communicate openly and honestly about project expectation, challenges, and progress. Based on BEM Code of Ethics, Section 9 of BEM Code emphasizes engineer responsibility to consider environmental impact of their project and minimize adverse effect. Integrate environmentally sustainable practice into project planning and execution, such as energy efficient design, waste reduction, and resource conservation. For example, from Board of Ethical Review cases, a structural engineer inspected a building with mechanical and electrical violation, which the owner reviewed confidentially. Although the engineer was not qualified in this area, the safety risks were known. The engineer briefly mentioned the issue in the report but did not inform authorities. The Board of Ethical Review concluded that the engineer should have reported the violation to the appropriate authority. Case number 4. An electrical engineer engaged in a electrification project at rural area in Sabah is not maintained professional standard. For example, professional competence and integrity are lacking. Discuss that need to be reported to Board of Engineer or bring this to the attention of the client. For solution is, this case need to be reported to the Board of Engineer International because their behavior in carrying out the project is essentially wrong and violate the established by law, and will bring this to the attention of the client and will not maintain silence as watch the standard of would be competent. Based on BM Code of Ethics, Section 2.1 of the BM Code of Professional Conduct emphasizes the importance of upholding integrity and professionalism in engineering practice. Reporting such standard practice and violation of professional standards demonstrate a commitment to integrity and professionalism by ensuring that ethical standards are upheld within the engineering profession. For example, from Board of Ethical Review cases, Engineer A anonymously report engineering misconduct to the Engineering License Board. The Board of Ethical Review evaluate the ethics of filing an anonymous complaint. They conclude that Engineer A had a duty to report the misconduct, although a signed complaint would have been more effective and fairer. The BER determined that an anonymous report was still ethical and preferable to report at all.
Next is case study number 5. Every electrical engineer shall at all times uphold the dignity and reputation in his profession and to safeguard the public interest in matters of safety. Discuss responsibilities and obligations in the event that due to the substation building under charge, adjacent buildings have been damaged beyond repair. So, the solutions are: firstly is conducting an investigation. Initiate a thorough investigation to find the root causes of the damage, which includes evaluating construction methods, materials used, and adherence to safety protocols. Next is act with integrity by maintaining honesty, transparency, and fairness in all dealings related to the project, ensuring that all actions reflect the high standards of the engineering profession. Based on BEM Code of Ethics, we need to maintain open communication by keeping the affected parties informed about the investigation findings, remedial actions, and timeline for repairs. Clear and honest communication is essential to maintain trust. Next is engage with all stakeholders, including the community, regulatory bodies, and other professionals involved in the project to address concerns and provide update on progress. Lastly is based on board ethical review cases, an engineer overseeing the design and construction of a substation caused irreparable damage to nearby buildings by failing to assess structural impacts and implement preventative measures. This neglect highlights the ethical duty of engineers to protect public safety and property through careful planning, adherence to safety standards, and proactive risk management. For case study number 6, engineer in electrical engineering should be allowed to practice as consultants and contractors at the same time. Personally, I disagree with this statement, and there are several reasons to support my opinion regarding this case. Firstly is the challenges. The challenges are conflict of interest. Balancing the interests of clients as a consultant while considering the profitability of contracts as a contractor can create conflicts. There may be temptations to prioritize the project where the individual has a financial stake, potentially compromising the best interests of clients. When acting as a contractor, there is a risk of bias in evaluating subcontractors or material suppliers. This bias can affect decision-making, leading suboptimal choices or unfair treatment. Lastly is regulatory bodies may scrutinize professionals practicing in dual roles more closely to ensure compliance with ethical standards and regulations. Any perceived breaches could result in disciplinary actions. Based on BEM Code of Ethics, firstly is engaging in dual roles may impact the engineer's reputation if conflicts of interest arise or if the actions are perceived as unethical. Engineers are prohibited from simultaneously acting as both consultant and contractors in the same project. Upholding the highest standards of professional conduct is essential to maintain trust and credibility within the engineering community and among stakeholders. Lastly is example from Board of Ethical Review cases. An engineer acted as both consultant and contractor for a public works project, leading to biased decisions that favored construction. This compromised the fairness expected from a consultant. The Board of Ethical Review found that the engineer broke the code of ethics by not keeping the two roles separate, causing conflicts of interest and poor professional judgment.
If the client requests a change of consultant, it's important to assess the reason for the change and evaluate whether it's in the best interest of all parties involved. If the first engineer has not been paid their fees, that should be addressed separately and resolved amicably. Proper procedure for changing consultant. First, initial communication. The second consulting engineer should request a meeting with the client to understand the reason for the change and to discuss any issue related to the project. Next, consultation with the first engineer. The second engineer should communicate with the first engineer to inform them of the client request and to gather information on the project status. This step ensures transparency and professional courtesy. BEM Code of Ethics. Engineers should not attempt to supplant another engineer who is in particular employment. Engineers should not take over any work of another engineer until the previous engineer has been duly notified and arrangement has been made for the changeover. Example from Board of Ethical Review cases. Case study on payment disputes. In another case, Engineer A refused to release project document to Engineer B due to unpaid fees. The board recommended that Engineer B facilitate a resolution by involving a mediator to address the unpaid fees issue. Once the payment dispute was resolved, a formal handover was conducted. This case highlights the importance of resolving financial dispute to ensure smooth transition between engineers. Involves a scenario where a consulting electrical engineer has been initially entrusted with a project, but is replaced by another engineer on their client request. Responsibilities of the second engineer. The second engineer must establish a clear line of communication with the previous engineer. This step is crucial to ensure that all project tasks, including any challenges or specific requirements, are well understood. This initial communication is not just a professional courtesy, but also an ethical obligation to ensure transparency and continuity in the project. Responsibility of the previous engineer. The previous engineer's role in the transition is to provide all necessary documentation and insight to the second engineer. This includes the approved plan, calculation, and any relevant correspondence. Cooperation during the handover ensure that the project can continue smoothly without any distraction or loss of critical information. BEM Code of Ethics. Engineers are expected to discharge their professional responsibility with integrity, fairness, and respect for the environment, public safety and welfare. This underpins all the professional activity and decision made during the transition. Example from Board of Ethical Review cases. In a Board of Ethical Review case, Engineer A was engaged on a project and subsequently replaced by Engineer B. Engineer B contacted Engineer A to discuss the project and ensure a smooth transition. They discovered the client has unresolved issues that needed addressing. Engineer B facilitated the resolution and ensured all changes were well documented and communicated.